the deeper you go in the earth, the more the variation in temperature that we see in the atmosphere is damped.
Sure.
So daily and annual and even decadal variation is damped the deeper you go. So if you get down deep enough, I don't know the exact depth, but let's say 10 meters, the annual variation in temperature change is very, very small. And at that depth, the annual temperature, the temperature would be very close to the mean annual air temperature of that particular area, geographical area, which in this climate is what, 46, 47?
Yeah, deep earth temperature about 47.
About 47.
47 degrees.
And so that is a lot warmer than the mean air temperature in January.
Right.
So that is the principle that allows you to relatively easily draw heat from the ground, which is sufficient to heat a building. In the summer, of course, the ground is a lot cooler than the air temperature, so you can do the reverse. And so you take advantage of that heat exchange by putting piping in the ground that contains a good heat-retaining fluid, in this case a mixture of water and
Propylene glycol.
Propylene glycol. And that fluid, which takes up the heat of the earth, is then pumped inside the building, where a heat pump extracts the heat from it in the wintertime, or in the summertime when the system is operating in air conditioning, would do the opposite and take the heat out of the building and put it back into the ground.
We've got 3 200-foot trenches here using what I call a slinky style horizontal closed loop system with about 1.5 miles of geothermal pipe in the ground that's circulating a food-grade propylene glycol and water solution to transfer heat from the ground to the heat pump inside. We have 3 parallel trenches that are with the piping buried at about 6 feet deep.
So Jared, how do you size a system like this? I mean, you take into the heat requirements of the house and then have some kind of formula that says, okay, I've got to have 6,000 or however many odd feet of tubing to provide that much heat.
Yeah, the most important step in designing a geothermal system is determining how much heat the house is going to need on the coldest day of the year.
Okay.
Once we have that information, we can model how much energy that house is, or how much heat that house is going to require throughout the course of the year by looking at bin data analysis and things like that to really predict exactly what percentage of the time the heat pump will need to run to meet that demand. And once we have that information, we can select the correct heat pump. And then depending on the efficiency of the heat pumps and the run fractions and the size of the heat pump itself, we're able to determine or specify the amount of pipe in the ground that we need to supply that heat.
This type of system is not completely free of fossil fuel energy because it requires electricity to operate the heat pump and the pumps that move the antifreeze solution around.
Yeah.
And part of that in this electrical system here is produced from fossil fuel energy.
Right. Right.
Although you're supporting renewable.
We are.
Electricity.
Yeah, we at our household we buy our proportion from the renewable part. Actually, what we get is not that, but we give enough money to support the renewable component of the Bangor hydro system.
Right. We do have one system installed that is a grid-tied photovoltaic solar system, which produces enough energy to completely offset the owner's heating, hot water, air conditioning, and utility bill. So again, to say it uses no fossil fuels isn't fair, because it is using electricity from the grid, but he's producing more electricity than he's using on an annual basis.
We're not doing it.
Come on, Ron.
Next year, phase 2.
But I assume your electrical use to power the system is probably pretty small. Is that true, or?
Well, I have the data.
I'm sure you do.
And it does increase our electricity bill. I haven't looked at it from the point of view of percentage, either of the cost or the number of kilowatts.
Yeah.
But it is still much more efficient than using electrical heat or oil heat.
Yeah.
And much less costly on a daily basis. Something like between 1 to 3 and 1 to 5 difference in the cost, given the present price of heating fuel.
Yeah.
Well, we produce most of our domestic hot water from solar. We have a series of heat absorption pipes on the roof, and that system also uses an antifreeze type of, it's a closed system with antifreeze that carries hot water down to our basement, where it's, well, it carries a antifreeze mixture, you're going to have to edit this, down to the basement, which is then exchanged with domestic hot water, the heat from the pipes that come from the roof installation. And also our geothermal heat pump is hooked up to our domestic hot water system, and that supplements the more direct solar hot water heating. So in our house, the heat pump does both heating and domestic water, and in addition, cooling in the summertime. The experience in the installation was pain-free. It took a week or two total with the various comings and goings of the people who did the work, and some work in the basement of our house. The upfront cost was substantial for our budget, but it will pay back. It's been in there for 3 years, and at the present rate of price of oil, it'll pay back in sometime 8 or 9 years. We don't know exactly. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot cheaper than the total price, because the federal government is still maintaining a 30% tax credit on these types of installations to encourage people to install them, and that's a substantial tax credit. So that comes off the cost of the system.
Got a couple dozen systems throughout an area between basically Augusta and Lincoln. I have a big variation of sizes. Every system is really custom tailored to the home, depending on what the site has to offer for characteristics, whether it's feasible to do a horizontal closed loop system or a vertical closed loop system, or even an open loop system. The first question is usually, how much does it cost to install? Which is a difficult question to answer. Again, because each system is custom tailored to the house, and depending on what they have for assets and what type of earth coupling system makes the most sense. Also, what type of heat delivery makes the most type of sense on the inside of the house, whether it be a forced air system or a radiant system. So it's very difficult to put a rough estimate on the installation cost, but we have found that it's held true on new construction systems. We generally see a payback in less than 5 years, and on retrofit systems, more in the 5 to 10 year range.
Okay. But you have to dig up my lawn, right?
We do, but as you can see, a short time later, you would never know that this piping was under this lawn.
Right.
You know, we do, once the installation or the original installation is complete, we do expect the trenches to settle back out a little bit, and usually plan on having equipment in several months after the installation to do a final cleanup and final grading of the site.
Is there an advantage over these horizontal versus vertical? I mean, Like if Ron's case, he had the room to do the horizontal.
Yeah, and the cost is the biggest
cost, okay, so
motivator.
it's much more expensive to drill a deep well. Okay, gotcha.
But for people who live in a town
Right. Well, I'm thinking about my backyard.
with a small
I have
lawn,
right. So, but it just can be done. It just goes vertically, but it's more expensive. Yeah, gotcha. But the heat exchange, I mean, the heat capacity, the heat exchange is roughly.
Yeah, the end
you
result
get
is the
just
same.
as much heat out of a deeper.
You know, we get the same. We design for the same temperatures. The difference is on a horizontal system, we're going to have a lot more pipe in the ground than on a vertical system where we can get down into that truly stable, deep earth temperature zone.
Okay.
Some of the systems that I saw on your website use local, like if people have a pond in their backyard or a water source. Can you talk about that for a minute? Are they actually using water from the pond to feed in, or?
No, and we don't have any pond loop systems, which is basically when we would put the same piping that we use in a horizontal closed loop system into a pond. That's very common in other states.
But it freezes here, right? Is that the...
Well, it does freeze here, and that's fine. You know, water's at its densest when it's 39 degrees. So once a pond has ice on over the top, it's reasonably safe to expect there to be 39-degree water at the bottom of the pond, which is absolutely warm enough for us to work with and design a system for. But it's more of a permitting and regulation side of things that has prevented us from using that approach.
Great.
What's the lifetime of a system like this? I mean, is this essentially limitless out here? Or is
the piping that we use in the ground has a 50-year warranty and actually has a life expectancy of over 200 years.
Yeah.
So once we have that infrastructure in the ground, that's really once in a lifetime expense.
the heat pump.
The heat pump could be estimated anywhere between 20 and 30-year life cycle.
Now, as Jared said, it's less expensive if you install a system when you're building a new house. In our case, we had baseboard heating, which was not ideally suited due to the heat pump approach, because it requires a much hotter temperature of circulating fluid to give enough heat to the house. So in our case, we had to install ducting for a forced hot air system coming off the heat pump. And that added to the expense. But if you're starting out from scratch and putting that type of ducting in, it's less expensive and much easier to install than in a house that already has an existent hot water heating system.
The Earth absorbs about 40% of the sun's energy, and this is actually about 500 times more energy than the Earth uses on an annual basis. So this passive solar collector called the Earth is really a limitless energy source.
Want to talk over there as well?
He's the talker, right?
Either
I
that
don't know,
or
you're
both
doing
of
a
you.
really good job.
No, you're